Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Animal-Based Dad podcast. This is the show where between my guest interviews with subject matter experts and topic-specific deep dives, the aim is to arm you with actionable insights and information on how to prioritize your metabolic health and improve your overall health and well-being. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Animal-Based Dad podcast. I'm your host, Ricky Duplessis. My guest today is a man I've recently been put in contact with, whose background and story resonates so deeply with me that I absolutely had to have him in the podcast. Mr. Simon Grant, welcome to the show, sir.
Ricky, absolute pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me on.
Most welcome. So Simon, you and I have had a good opportunity to catch up, but for the audience, I wonder if you wouldn't mind just giving us a brief overview of your background. Where have you come from? How did you get involved in the metabolic health space? What does that journey look like for you so far?
Sure. I'm a physiotherapist to training, been about 28 years now. And over the time as a physio, there's a funny little contract happens with clients where you get inside the personal space very quickly. There's not too many people in your life you'd allow that close, probably in your underwear, and feel comfortable. And it happens very fast as a physio. So there's a contract of trust built up there really quickly. And that allows people to tell you things. And basically I've learned over the years that people don't have anybody to listen to. Many people have nobody to talk to tell their fears and emotions and what's going on in their life. And I'm there, I'm a captive audience. So they told me everything. And over that time, I realized that the pain I was dealing with wasn't always just a physical problem. A lot could be trauma-based, a lot could be stress-based, chronic stress-based, and that was coming out through some of the pain. And I looked around to what else could I do other than just become a physio. And a friend of a friend was a hypnotherapist, and we got chatting, and he said, "Sure, I'll train you." And I went for it. I'm somebody that just likes to grab the opportunities as they're presented. And I think the universe pretty much presents you with many opportunities all the time. It's whether you've got your eyes open to see them or not. And I added the hypnotherapy into the physio, and it just complemented it really nicely. And so I started treating body and mind. Alongside that, my health journey went on. I had a few health issues that I've been trying to do things with over the years, like migraines and IBS, arthritis. Not very much success, really. I'm in health. I was trying to apply my own techniques and they weren't working. My youngest son was born and he was diagnosed with autism around about 3 years old. Myself and my partner, Melly, did our best to try and give him the best life that we could. That involved a lot around nutrition. We homeschool him as well, which gives us a lot of say in what he does, what he eats especially. He's not exposed to all the processed stuff that many other kids are. So we were able to sort of direct him down certain routes. And the knowledge we had at the time was vegetables were best. So we were vegetarian for a long time. Then we went deeper and became vegan, and deeper again became raw vegan. None of it helped. He was just getting behaviour-wise worse and worse over time. And around about 9.5 to 10, Melly came across Carnivore online. I love my vegetables, and she persuaded and persuaded and persuaded, and I eventually agreed to a month of Carnivore, just for peace, but also to see what would happen. And within the month, 30 days, migraines are gone. And that was 20 years worth of, at this point, every 2 weeks having a migraine and a day disappearing. That's a big chunk of your life that's gone. And so that was phenomenal. And I thought, well, maybe there's something here. So I carried on for 90 days and they didn't really come back. And my stomach started to improve and the knee pain started to go away and the creaky joint got less and I could do things I couldn't do before. And the main reason we done it was obviously Mikey, our youngest son, and the meltdowns, which were pretty spectacular by that stage, started to come. And we're 2.5 to 3 years in now, and he's pretty much a normal 12.5-year-old with the usual moods up and down and the voice that comes and goes, the occasional bit of stubbornness. But what would happen in the past is if he'd come into a stressful situation, he'd lose his mind or disappear. And that's pretty hard to cope with. We live in a small village, middle of nowhere. He'd be gone for hours at a time. Now he just takes himself off for half an hour, comes back, and we can chat about it. If you'd known him before, you would understand how unbelievable that is, that he's able to have awareness of his emotions, to control them, to think, to have some self-awareness and be able to logically explain how he felt. And that just wasn't a thing that he experienced before. So the whole nutrition side has changed our lives so much that I decided to qualify as a nutritionist, and studied and qualified as a GAPS nutritionist, which stands for Gut and Physiology and Gut and Psychology Syndrome. It's basically a gut healing protocol using food. I did that into my practice, and I now do basically lifestyle consultation, where whatever the person needs, I can target them with the body, the mind, or the gut treatment that they need.
Awesome.
And on the back of that, I've been involved in a documentary for the last year around carnivore nutrition. That was completed in September, so that should be out in the summer, and I'll be able to talk about that more in the summer.
Nice. That's awesome. That's awesome. So you've touched on a few big things there. So I'll go back first. So for health reasons, you went vegetarian for quite a long time, then into vegan, then into raw vegan. But you found that contrary to sort of popular belief and the mainstream media out there, your symptoms and your health actually declined as a result.
Yeah, so what I was trying to help were the migraines in the stomach, and the migraines were getting worse, and I was losing weight, just starting to constantly lose weight. I come from a genetic background of very small, slight Scots people. My dad's about 5'6" and about 9 stone, which would be about 50 kilos, and my gran on his side was about 5'0" and 6 stone, which would be about 40 kilos. So, very slight stature, obviously not fat absorbers, not nutrition absorbers at all. I had a similar sort of makeup, so I didn't really absorb food. Fat wasn't my friend. And certainly when we went on the higher vegetable, higher carb diet, I just felt gradually worse and worse and worse. It was up 3 times a night, the toilet. I now know that was overconsumption of carbohydrate. I get the energy slump that everybody just accepts as normal in the middle of the afternoon. Oh, well, that's just getting old. And, we all accept these things as minor things that are just part of life. They're absolutely not. And I can tell you that because they're all gone.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. So you've switched that, and your experience is awesome because you've had the contrast of 2 extremes, right? To go from raw vegan to carnivore is almost unthought of, unspoken about, because the majority of people who go down the vegan route do so for ideological reasons, not for health reasons. And so your feedback and testimony is tremendous because you're not ideologically embedded into one way or the other.
No.
And I think that's fantastic. I'm fascinated by the science of it, not the ideology of it. I want to know the mechanistic reasons why it works. So to get to talk to people who aren't ideologically embedded is awesome. I love it.
It's the really interesting thing is that both vegans and carnivores are generally coming at it from the same place. They want to look after the animals properly. They want to do something for the health. They both want to help the climate. Now, they both have evidence that supports their argument, which is really interesting. It's just about looking at where the research comes from, where it's been funded, who it's been funded by, and who the research helps, depending on the result it gets.
100%. I've had many an online debate with vegans and the plant-based community, the climate community to a degree as well, saying that we're actually doing ourselves a massive disservice because the enemy, the true enemy, is big industry.
100%.
And if we were able to meet somewhere in the middle and recognize that actually all camps want the animals to be better looked after, we want them out on pasture to be regeneratively raised, because that's good for the pasture, it's good for the climate, it's good for everything involved in that entire ecosystem and food chain. The only point we disagree on is we're going to eat the animals because we recognize that they're the best source of nutrition for us. And they're ideologically opposed to that. And therefore, it all falls apart. If we could just set that end bit of difference aside and meet in the middle, we could fundamentally change the way the food system works.
It's regenerative agriculture it has to be the future for agriculture. The ability to regenerate the land is stunning, and it can be done in 5 to 6 years, even from starved land if you do things in the right way. And it's just about consecutively grazing animals in the right order and then planting the right vegetables and crops behind them, not monoculturing, and just allowing the land to do what it does, because there's nowhere in nature you ever see a monoculture. Ever.
Exactly.
Doesn't exist.
Yeah. 100%. And then you come along with all your petrochem fertilizers and insecticides and stuff, herbicides that you need to keep the crop clean. It's
It's nonsense.
And just look around in Scotland where I am at the moment. In the last 2 months, I think we've had half a day of blue sky. It has rained almost 24 hours a day for the last 2 months. And that's unheard of. Here, I keep my own birds. Here, I've got ducks, guinea fowl, chicken, and turkeys. And the ducks can't keep dry. I would never have thought I'd ever see that. It's not even weather for ducks. That's crazy. We're having to bring them inside and hair dry them. They are soaked completely down to the skin. Their down is wet. And I'm just driving around it and watching sand and soil be washed away by the ton off the fields. There's silt everywhere. There's flooding everywhere. We've got farmland around us that looks like it's just a loch. You could row across it in a boat. At this time of year, farmers should be thinking about sowing and seeding and getting the ground prepared, and they can't get on it at all. So how do they recover from that? It's crazy.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting comparison. I'm fortunate enough to live out in rural Hampshire, and we're surrounded by farmland. The little cottage that we're renting is surrounded 360 degrees by pasture, and my landlord raises animals. So he's got, he sort of cycles between sheep and cattle. He's got cattle at the moment. But just over the road, it's all monocrop agriculture. It's all like rapeseed and stuff like that comes up. And the difference in the quality of the land itself, like my landlord's land is always covered in grass, always, all year round. Over the road is dry and dusty unless they've gone and actually planted something. Like once they've harvested the crop, it's just barren soil. It's ridiculous. There's almost nothing that wants to grow there.
It's a really interesting comparison. I was speaking to somebody the other day about this, that the soil microbiome is an absolute mirror of the gut microbiome. I mean, it's almost like we have an internal soil. That's one of the things that Natasha Campbell-McBride always talks about in the gaps. If you don't look after the external soil that we grow the plants in, then you're going to damage your internal soil. And the mimic between the microbes, the jelly glycocalyx, which holds it all together and holds the water in, and all the nutrients be held inside so the plants can access the nutrition. It's exactly the same as our gut, with the jelly glycocalyx, which the microbiome live in, and the gut lining, which is healthy, that allows us to access nutrition. It's exactly the same thing. You damage one, you damage the other.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I just want to digress slightly, because you made the point of saying that the main reason for the nutritional focus was for your son's benefit. Now, I have a son who's autistic as well. My son's a lot younger than yours. He turns 5 a bit later this year. And we're going through quite a tough time with him at the moment. I can fully appreciate what you mean by spectacular meltdowns, because it's like dealing with Jekyll and Hyde. And they can be unreasonable little people. But all kids could be at the best of times. But an autistic child who is emotionally dysregulated and neurologically dysfunctional in their episodes of meltdown, it's something else to behold. It's traumatic, and it's traumatic for everyone in the family, not just them. And I watch my wife, I watch my daughter who's neurotypical, and everyone will be in tears. He's having meltdowns. You can't sort of stop his meltdowns. He will jump up and throw himself on the floor. So he'll self-harm in his tantrum and frustration and the midst of his meltdown. So you can't leave him to do that. You have to go and physically restrain him to stop him from hurting himself, but that makes the meltdown progress and last longer than it otherwise probably would. It is terrible. So I can appreciate where you're coming from, but you've said there that the switch to carnivore made a fundamental difference in your son's regulation and how his development started to move forward. But I wonder if you wouldn't mind just unpacking that a little bit for us.
Sure. So I think as well as you can get leaky gut, you can get leaky brain. And there's a barrier for both. And the toxins in the body can get through in either. So as far as I understand the gut, that we have a vast amount of bacteria in there, and we have more bacterial DNA in us than we do human. So they're in charge, really. If we don't keep them healthy, then we can't be healthy. It's a symbiotic sort of partnership between us. They look after us, and we look after them. We inherit our gut at birth. as we come down the birth canal, and that can be contributed to by both the mother and the father. So if either parent or both parents has some sort of gut issue or inflammatory problem, then it can be passed on at birth. And generally, what you find is that it amplifies with each generation, because the health of the diet has got worse and worse and worse exponentially as we've gone down the generations. Your granny and grandpa, although they were probably around during the war, their food was clean. Although it was limited and they couldn't get access to everything they wanted to, it wasn't processed. So now we have a generation that's been born into a processed food world. A lot are born by C-sections. They don't even get that microbiome seeded. And then they're bottle fed, which is not a natural substance. Breast milk is designed specifically for your baby, and it changes from feed to feed depending on the needs of the baby and how the mother's and the baby's bodies change. And then if the child goes on to high carb processed food diet, and they have a damaged gut already, then it just amplifies and amplifies and amplifies the problem. So we have cells in the gut called tight junctions, which sort of seal the gut lining, and there's a really nice big thick jelly layer over that protects it, and that's what allows the nutrition to pass back and forward. It stops the toxins getting through. But if pathogenic bacteria are in charge, which in kids who are born with a gut dysbiosis, that's usually the case, they produce toxins. And these toxins can damage that jelly layer, get through to those tight junctions and start to open them up. They get damaged. And that allows those toxins and often undigested food to flow through into the bloodstream. Now, your immune system's there to protect you, but it doesn't differentiate between what's particularly good and bad. It just sees what shouldn't be there and it does something about it. Now, these toxins and undigested food, which continually flow in like a river, get attacked by the immune system, and that can set up all sorts of immune reactions, and they're different for everybody because we're born with our own set of genes, and that tends to be expressed in its own individual way. So for some people it can be headaches and migraines, for some people it could be skin issues, eczema and psoriasis, for others it could be asthma, others joint pain, others really obvious digestive issues, and that will express itself differently for everybody. So just because you don't have a digestive problem doesn't mean you don't have a digestive problem, just because it's not manifesting as an actual symptom. Now, with kids, that can then go up into the brain, and the toxins can pass into the brain and cause disorders in there. Also, what the gut microbiome does, it produces a lot of our hormones, happy hormones especially, some components of serotonin, oxytocin, and endorphins. Now, they're there to regulate your mood. Now, without those, mood's very hard to regulate. So if you have this flow of toxins in your system, your body's generally inflamed, you're feeling restless, unsettled, and you don't have the hormone balance to be able to regulate your mood, then that's a recipe for disaster. And a child which doesn't have an adult brain that can be a bit more self-aware, they can't express themselves. And an awful lot of autistic children are non-verbal, so they can't tell you. So how do they express their discomfort, their pain, their dysregulation in their brain? They let it all out emotionally.
Yeah.
And that's often how they dump that hyperstimulation in the brain. They have to get it out with this massive expression of emotion that allows sort of the dopamine to be released, and then they can calm down. But without it, they can't calm down. So for a lot of autistic children, the meltdowns are their only way to regulate, even though for the parent who's experiencing it, it's horrible. It's a real catch-22 situation. So as long as that gut is damaged, as long as the toxins are flowing into the system, it won't ever change, and they will become autistic adults with further neurological issues, and often leads to addiction sort of symptoms, because they tend to regulate their diet very, very specifically to a small number of components, usually high carb, usually quite processed. What does that do? Feeds pathogenic bacteria and further drives inflammation, and it becomes a vicious circle they can't ever get out of. The only way to sort it is to heal the gut. The only way. And it's not easy in a child that will not eat anything else. So it has to be done very, very slowly over quite a long period of time, until quite often those children get to the stage where they realise that what they're eating is actually making them feel better. And from that moment, then things start to accelerate and improve. But until that moment, it is the parent's job to find a way to do it. And there's no easy way of doing that at all.
Yeah.
There really isn't. But without it, there's no improvement. So it's the balance of what are your priorities, to put up with the difficulty and the hardship and the heartache of having to push through this really hard phase to get to the other side, or not to take that step and to stay where you are. That's the only two options you have.
Yeah, I share very similar sentiment to you. understanding what I do about the developmental phases that humans go through. There's windows of development that need to be met. Like the biology doesn't negotiate with you and put it off because it's a bit difficult right now. Like you have certain developmental windows, and if you're not giving the child the platform for that development to happen as it should, so from a nutritional standpoint, it would be the essential nutrients and the stuff needed for the microbiome to thrive on, then yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think it's a controversial thing to say, and I think it'll upset a lot of people, but I do think that is the line in the sand, that the difference between a child who faces developmental struggles early on in life, but then overcomes them to be indistinguishable for the most part from the general population, versus someone who has developmental problems that sort of stagnate and remain all through life, is whether or not you are able to meet that need through those developmental cycles. And a lot of people, a lot of parents, unfortunately, don't see it that way, don't understand it that way. In our pursuit of everlasting empathy that seems to be popular in our culture at the moment, no one wants to have those hard conversations about, well, that this is your responsibility. The child doesn't have agency. And you've got to kind of see this through. You've got to figure it out, because if you don't figure it out, that the child's going to be stuck like this for life. That's, yeah, I like that you've touched on that, but I can already see some people in the audience are going to be like, oh,
It's a really tricky one. So I work a bit with kids with autism. The conversation often stops before it even starts. And I think the reason for that is that a lot of people have guilt.
Yeah.
And the main thrust of how people think about autism is it's a genetic condition. And I'm not sure anybody 100% gets rid of autism once it's there, but all of what we might call the symptoms, if you want to call it that, around it are not genetics.
Yeah.
There's not a gene that creates skin loss. There's not a gene that creates meltdowns. There's not a gene that creates muscle pain or gut problems. We know the entire genome, as far as we know. There are no genes that cause that. Is there a gene that's been isolated for autism? I think that's debatable.
Yeah.
Is it purely a genetic condition? Is it inherited? Probably yes. But does that make it genetic? Not necessarily. Does that mean you can then do something about it?
Yeah.
Probably.
Even if it was genetic, and we're going back to sort of, I think it was in either the 70s or the 80s, where we first started mapping our DNA and understanding genes, and everything became genetic. Everything was genetic. This was genetic, that was genetic. And fortunately, our understanding of how genes work has advanced to the point where we now know that, yes, fair enough. It may be that your genes predispose you to certain things, meaning that they leave you at higher risk of certain things, but the expression of those genes, whether they turned on or off, is predominantly down to lifestyle and environment. It's not set in stone. You have some agency in whether or not that predisposition comes to pass. So I think you're right. I think that there's things that predispose people to this developmental issue. And I think you're also right. I don't think that you cure autism as such, but I think the ability of the person to regulate their own emotions, to actually think and function as human beings should. So to use speech and language and to be able to integrate into society. They might be slightly socially awkward. They might have their own quirks. They might even carry on some stimming behaviors later into life, and that's fine. But are they able to function as a member of their community, or are they someone who has to have 24/7 care, even as an adult, because they can't be left alone and they can't look after themselves? And I think that is the dividing line. I think you can absolutely be autistic and be perfectly functional, and I know many people like that, versus the other extreme where, in my perspective, they haven't had the right support and they haven't had the right interventions during critical developmental windows in their childhood, and it's left them stunted for life and dependent on care for life. And I think that's a tragedy.
Yeah. People just need to see past themselves as well, and realize that you're doing it for the child. You're not
Yeah.
doing it for your own ego. And yes, you're the parent. Maybe it's something that you have passed on to them, but you haven't done it on purpose. So the guilt's pointless, and your job is to give that child the best possible chance in life in every way.
100%. Yeah, no, for sure. So your son is doing a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
How has he taken to carnivore? Is he enjoying it? Does he like it? He obviously does it because he realizes he feels better on it, but how's he taken to it?
Yeah, so the thing about homeschooling is that you have control over the diet. They're not exposed to the processed food, as I said, as other kids are at school. There's not the peer pressure to eat all the rubbish. So he'd pretty much gone along with everything we've done so far. And yep, same with carnivore. He started it, a bit resistant to start with, but he knows now. He'll say, if he has something that he shouldn't have, next day he'll be saying, I don't want to do that again. I don't feel good. Stomach's not feeling great, or his mood will be off, or I know I can't control myself. So what he's got now is self-awareness, where there was none of that at all before.
Yeah,
and he knows he feels better on it, and he doesn't want to go back.
Yeah, really. That's awesome.
Yeah. So we do a thing called no plant gaps, which is carnivore with slight added extras. So we do raw fermented dairy and meat stock regularly. A few keto berries occasionally if we make ice cream.
Nice.
That's it. But it's meat, fat, raw fermented dairy, fish and eggs. That's it.
That's awesome. It's amazing. Now you obviously run your own practice, so physio, hypnotherapy, and you've added in the nutritional angle at that. Mm-hmm. Moving beyond just your family, in terms of testimonials from customers or clients, how have they taken to the advice? Because it'll be a bit out of the ordinary for your physio to sort of be doing hypnotherapy and then also giving advice around nutrition and coming at things from a holistic perspective. How have people received that?
It's interesting, the fact that most people will come from a physio point of view to begin with. A lot do. But I always do a lifestyle assessment, always. So I'll ask questions about nutrition and diet. And the biggest giveaway question ever is, do you have any health issues? Usually the answer is no. You're not on any medication. Oh, I've got high blood pressure medication. I'm taking omeprazole for my reflux. Again, for people, that's not a health problem. And they don't see it as a problem. But that gives me such a intuition about where they are from the health point of view. And I'll instantly add in stuff. And then they'll start telling me about, well, I'm suffering from anxiety and my stomach's not that great. And it just opens the door for the hypnosis. Now, the hardest change is definitely the carnivore way. So there's not many people will jump in. Most eventually get there. So I'll quite often do just take the bad things out, like the grain, the sugar, and the vegetable oil, and then start to add in a little bit more meat, go for keto fruit and vegetables, make the vegetables a smaller amount, and then by that stage they're on ketogenic and they're feeling better. And there might be a few other things to work on. They're not improving. I'm saying, well, why don't you try it for 30 to 90 days? And that's easy because everybody can do something for 30 days. You've got to get out a jail card at that point. Most people by 30 days are noticing such a big difference they don't want to go back. I have one particular client I've been working on for 3 years. Her entire life has changed. She's trained as a Wim Hof instructor. She lost 64 kilos in about 14 months on carnivore. Her entire life has changed. And it's just about finding the right little niche of information to apply at the right time. And hypnosis is quite handy for that because it's basically the therapy of persuasion.
And, that's awesome.
And language that opens doors for the subconscious to accept certain ways of thinking, and that can lead you down the carnivore route quite easily.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. You almost got like the cheat code there then.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And we're hypnotizing ourselves all the time, every day, by the things we tell ourselves about ourselves and the language that we use. So, people are very aware of when they say I am or I am not. And the thing they say after that, that's what they truly believe. So if they can change that little bit of language, it can start to change their life. It's really powerful.
Nice. I like that. So where do you see things going from here? I know you've got the documentary, and we won't talk about that too much because that'll come out in the summer, and I'm looking forward to seeing that. But you are also in the process of getting your own podcast launched. How do you see this trajectory continuing? Because it obviously it's been quite revolutionary. It sounds like it's had a dramatic impact on your lives.
Yeah, well, it just gives you a platform, doesn't it? I can only reach so many people in my practice, and I know this works because it works for me, and it's worked for my family, and it works for my clients. So it's information that needs to be got out there. A lot of it's based on traditional knowledge that the older cultures have used and we have stopped using, and used to be handed down mouth to mouth, generation to generation. And because communities in general are much more isolated these days, that information is not available, and modern life has blocked that sort of information
Yeah.
coming in. So we need to sort of relearn that, apply it to life, and just slow down a bit. That's the main thing, is slowing down to be able to think about how you feel, become self-aware. So that's the knowledge that I want to get out there. The documentary should certainly help with that, and that will hopefully progress on to further projects in the future. And the podcast is really two things. Number one, to give a bigger platform to get the information out there, pretty much in the same way you're doing here, but also by the time the film comes out, to have a platform to be able to speak louder, to get to a bigger audience. And the beauty of doing the documentary is I've been able to gain access to a lot of the thought leaders within carnivore, nutrition, psychology space, and their voice needs heard.
Yeah.
Because the information that people have at the moment is leading us down a road to chronic ill health and disease. It's not leading to us towards energetic health. And we're all born with the potential for that.
Yeah.
Every human should be healthy.
Absolutely.
Most people, not all, but most people are born healthy.
Yeah.
Most disease that they accumulate over life is picked up due to the lifestyle. So if you can reverse that trend with your own lifestyle, and people have the power to change their own health, that's the number one thing. We've handed over responsibility to a system that's not really designed to improve our health internally. It's designed to treat symptoms. It's fantastic from an acute side of things, incredible. But managing chronic disease, not great.
I've spoken about it previously, and I think you've touched on something brilliant there. So the medical system, for me, if we think back, go back hundreds, maybe even thousands of years, right? Infectious disease and trauma, those were our issues, right? Those are the things that killed us before we died of old age. Look at us today. And I wrote a book, and I published it around about last year this time. And in the research for that book, I looked at the top 10 causes of death in all major Western countries. And it's all lifestyle disease. It's all non-communicable, which means it's not infectious, and it's not trauma-based either. It's heart disease, cancers, it's stroke. It's all things that your lifestyle and environment impart. And the worst part is you don't just catch cancer. You don't just get heart disease. It's years and years, if not decades, of your environment and your lifestyle being off, and that damage accumulating, and then eventually it manifests as a chronic, non-communicable disease. And then people are like, oh, well, we'll go to the medical system, because you're absolutely right. We've outsourced our health. We've been taught to assume everything's perfect until it's not. And then when something goes wrong, you outsource it to someone. Nowhere are we taught to take agency for ourselves and to treat our health as something we have to invest into. And we have to actually, there's certain things we need to do on a regular day by day basis to make sure that our health remains where it should be over the long term. We're taught, no, you just carry on as you want, like work, go to school, do your thing, assume everything's fine until it's not. And then you go see a professional. What do the professionals do? Unfortunately, you get pulled into the pharma side of things, and then you end up managing symptoms, because that's where the money is. Now, I can't fault pharma for that. So big pharma, if we think about infectious disease, the advent of modern medicine as we have it today, where we have the pharmacological stuff available to us, was absolutely fantastic. And it drove infectious disease way, way down. And so I think infectious disease and trauma to a degree are not issues for us anymore. Certainly not to the scale that they were in our past, because if you get certain infections, you can treat it using pharmacological stuff and you can get rid of it. But where the true money lies, and as any capitalist type organization we want to do, the priority is making money. It's making profit. That's why you exist. That's why they're not charities. They're there to make money. And where the money really lies is in symptom management, not in root cause curing. That's why if I walk into Sainsbury's a little bit later today, and I walk into the sort of medicine section there, and I go pick up anything there, it's for the treatment of and list symptoms. Nowhere is it for the curing of or the removal of, or nowhere does it resolve anything. It just treats symptoms. All of it treats symptoms. So we've been taught to outsource our health, and we're outsourcing it to a system which manages symptoms because that's what's profitable. Or it's a vicious cycle.
It's on all sorts of levels as well. As you said, those companies are beholden to the shareholders. They're not beholden to the clients who they're trying to treat. I spoke to a lawyer last week in the US, and he's just moved from a federal level to a state level. He's applying for Congress because the federal government's 75% funded by big pharma companies. So basically, the government is beholden to the pharma shareholders. And
Christopher Brandon, that is.
It is indeed.
It is good man. Yeah, he's a very good man.
Indeed he is. So yeah, they have influence at every level. And as you said, it is not in their interest at all. If we all got cured tomorrow, they'd be bankrupt. Yeah. It's not a great business model.
No, it's not. And I'm a capitalist at heart. A meritocratist, I think is the correct way to say it. I'll start a company. I want to be profitable. I want to make money. And that's fine. So I can't fault the system. The system is doing what the system should do. But I think what we've done wrong societally is assuming that our health is fine until it's not, and then outsourcing it. What we should do to move away from this entire problem is understand that your health is, let's look at it like a retirement plan. Like everyone happily accepts it. Yeah, but you're going to pay into a pension, and you make sacrifices today for your future, and you're going to invest, and you're going to make sure that when you come to retire, you've got something to live off and look after yourself. If we framed our health in a similar way and stop only living in the right here, right now, but understood that to have our health where we want it to be in the future, there's sacrifices that we need to make today. And I say sacrifices because we live in a world where we have become so convenience and pleasure driven. Everything about what our technology does is aimed at either our entertainment or our convenience or our pleasure. And unfortunately, depending on how you want to look at it, that is horrendously misaligned with what our biology actually needs and expects. Like at a cellular level, if you're talking about input-output mechanistically, pleasure, entertainment, comfort doesn't do us good long term. We need hormetic stresses. We need to put in hard physical work, whether that's exercising or a good day's labor or whatever the case may be. We need to be moving often. We need to sleep well and in sync with the light cycles around us, in sync with our circadian rhythms. There's so much that we would sacrifice from how modern society wants things to do, but it would ensure that our health long term, our health span stays as high as possible, plus our lifespan. So I think if people got their heads wrapped around that and started making adjustments to their lifestyles, we would see the decline of pharma to a degree without them having to sacrifice their core business model or what they're trying to do, because they just wouldn't have the client base anymore.
It's outsourcing, as you mentioned. It's not just for your health to the medical system. We've outsourced our entire lives. And we're steadily losing the skills that would move your body and use your mind and keep your gut healthy, because we're not connected to the land anymore. We don't have to use our bodies to chop wood and to hunt animals and to individually farm the land. Communities breaking up, so communication and connection is disappearing, which is essential for mental health. And because we're not in touch with the ground anymore, those soil bacteria are not really going into our system anymore. So a lot of birth bacteria don't exist anymore in this young generation, basically because they've disappeared out of the soil to begin with, because we're farming them out of existence, and also because people are not touching the soil. And so without those, we can't be healthy. And so we're becoming disassociated from nature in so many ways.
That's actually an interesting point that you raise there, because I'm an advocate for grounding in connection with nature from multiple aspects. Now, the biggest criticisms of grounding that I've seen within the health and wellness space that has been aimed at the electrical connection concept, the earthing concept. But I think you're actually right there. I think that it's multifaceted, because spending time out in nature does your mental health a tremendous amount of good. Mm-hmm. Like, you're just walking out of the building and getting outside. Within 5 minutes, there's a definite lift in your mood. You're feeling better. So there's that connection to nature there, but also then the bacteria, the microbiome, the exposure to the microorganisms in the environment that would have been part and parcel of human existence for thousands upon thousands of years, that we're almost completely isolated from now, because modern society just wants to sterilize everything. These little sterile, perfect, contained units that just, I don't think it's good.
Yeah, I mean, the bacteria cover every millimeter of us as an organism, and we have antibacterial everything. Now, they communicate with each other and us, and we look at the concept of pleomorphism. They swap genes between each other and us. So if you destroy them, you're pretty much destroying an integral part of yourself.
Yeah.
Why would you do that?
And that's interesting, because people aren't taught that. You're taught that bacteria, microorganisms are only ever pathogenic.
No.
There's almost nothing out there that teaches about the symbiosis and the fact that whether we like it or not, we're more bacteria than we are human cells. And there needs to be the symbiotic relationship between us. We have to look after them for them to look after us. It sounds like hoodoo nonsense to the average person, because it's so far removed from how they're taught.
It's a sterile world, isn't it? People become less and less connected to who they are, what they do in their own life, then it just numbs you, and you have no clue about. It's like the innate knowledge just disappears, and people just knew that in the past. They knew that sunlight. I spoke to a guy yesterday, Roderick Lambert, whose speciality is physics, and he was saying just by going outside, even on a cloudy day, you're getting the full light spectrum, and you can never ever get that inside. And that is the first origin of our energy comes from light. So without exposure to that natural light, especially early in the morning, your circadian rhythm gets completely disrupted. We have the LEDs and the artificial lights, which are completely wrong for us, and everything gets skewed. So many levels we're disrupting, from chemicals we use, what we put on our skin, what we look at, what we listen to, what we think about. We're just pulling ourselves away from what's real and natural. Yeah. And if people can look a wee bit back to the past, you don't have to go a million years back to the past, but just so my partner's Hungarian, and even as she was growing up, they had chicken soup every weekend that lasted to the middle of the week. Every day in school, they had homemade kefir made from raw milk in the school. The community killed a pig about 3-4 times a year, and they ate every part of it. So nothing was wasted. They were completely involved with their nutrition. The fermentation processes that break down fiber and get rid of toxins and actually make nutrients more bioavailable, with loads and loads of fantastic bacteria, were just part of her life. You know, stuffed cabbage and sauerkraut, all those things that just exponentially put in payments for health. It's like compounding the health payments, just day in, day out. How many people do that now? I challenge people to go in the supermarket and look at the average shopping trolley. It's full of bread, it's full of microwave meals, it's full of cakes and biscuits, crisps, sweets. There's very few that actually have real food in them anymore. How is a person in their body supposed to be healthy when you're feeding it that, frankly, crap?
100%. And even worse than that, even the health conscious people who are walking through the supermarket, there's such health washing on the processed and ultra processed products at the moment. How do they know what they're buying is even helpful? There's so many people walk around, and then, like, again, I'll use Sainsbury's as an example because it's just up the road. You can walk through the dairy aisle and there's kefir there, but it's like, if I were to take that, and I've not done the experiment, so I'm speculating, this is just my opinion, but I would put money on, if you were to take that off the shelf and you were to put it under microscope and try and analyze what the microbiome content of that is, because it's supposed to be fermented dairy, it's supposed to be full of microbes. I bet there's almost nothing, or they're all dead.
Yeah, well, you use pasteurized, homogenized milk as a starter, and commercially it's not viable to ferment for 24 to 36 hours. So it'll be a 12-hour ferment. So it'll still have lactose in, which a lot of people are intolerant to. The number of bacteria will be limited, and the breadth of bacteria will be small, and the pasteurization has already killed most of the microbes in it anyway. So it's going to do something. It's going to do a very, very minimal amount compared to you getting an A2 raw milk and fermenting it for 24 to 36 hours yourself at home. The end product there is a completely different animal, and it is an animal. It's a living organism with some like 32 different types of bacteria and protozoa and fungi and yeasts in it that are beneficial for you. And most people will find it disgusting because it's quite a bitter taste, and we've lost the bitter taste, we've lost the sour taste, and these are usually the more healthy, because our palates are so used to sweet now. Do you follow the two doctors down south, Unwin's? Jen and David Unwin. So he's really prominent in diabetes research. So he produced a little pamphlet showing teaspoons of sugar in the average food. Now, our body needs about a teaspoon a day, and it produces it itself through gluconeogenesis. Average breakfast, which would be cornflakes, toast, and maybe some peanut butter and apple juice, is 21 teaspoons of sugar.
Yeah.
So the average person eating that is starting the day with blood sugar through the roof, and then crashes afterwards. Yeah. How can you ever recover from that? And that's the average food intake we have. So our entire body is now sugar, 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 and we've forgotten that the bitter tastes are where the health is.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's insane. I remember what an eye-opener it was for me. I went ketogenic in early 2018. Similar to yourself, I just faced health decline in spite of exercise. I'd always been a very active guy. And I'd come from it. Well, I come from a place where I thought as long as I was doing a certain level of physical activity on a regular basis, I could eat what I want. I was wrong. Once the elixir of youth started to wear off, and once I got out of my 20s and started getting into my 30s, I started to gain weight uncontrollably. I started to face cognitive decline, and I didn't put the two together at the time. I would struggle to concentrate. I would be very, very moody. I remember my wife and I used to fight a lot because I was just an unpleasant bastard to be around. Like, I was just miserable. With no cause, no rhyme or reason. But when I went ketogenic, I did it mostly because I was desperate from the core of me to avoid having to count calories, because there's nothing, being a red-blooded South African male, there's nothing I'm more petrified of than walking away from meals hungry because a certain number on a calculator says you've had enough. So I had a look and I thought, okay, I can give keto a try. It's heavy with meat, heavy with fat. Like, I like that. You'll be satiated on that. Let me give it a 3-month trial I gave myself. Revolutionary. Blew my mind. And started to see such improvements cognitively, physically, and it was absolutely insane, because it came across to me as, well, this is more or less how we should be eating. This is more or less how our metabolism should be functioning. Like, this is far more in line with what we're needing than what the conventional sort of societal way of doing things is. Yet when you try eat that way, it's massively inconvenient, because you basically have to cook everything for yourself at home, because you can't. And it's got a little bit better, so I'll just qualify that a little bit. But if you're going out and you're doing day-to-day life as you were, it's very difficult to find stuff that is not carb-laden, sugar-loaded, and all the sugar-free or like chemical alternatives. But everything is aimed at being sweet. Everything is aimed at hitting dopamine feedback loops to make you feel good. Everything's aimed at pleasure with food. There's very little available in the secular world that is aimed at actual nutrition.
Yeah, when you eat really deep, nutritious food, you eat less of it as well, and you're fuller for longer. And again, that's not a good business model. You try to sell food, is it?
No, it's not. I eat on average once a day, and I'm still active. So I've done a workout earlier today, I use a heart rate monitor to track my workout stats. Let me just have a look. So I don't track calories, but in my workout today, I've burnt 1,366 calories. So that I think for a 40-year-old man, I think that's a reasonable amount of effort in a single workout session. But I'm not hungry currently. I will be hungry later today. I'll get home this evening, and at some point, usually between sort of 5 o'clock, 7 o'clock, somewhere there, I'll get truly physiologically hungry. And then I'm like, okay, right now I want to eat. And I'll go and I'll cook myself. What am I going to have today? Today I'm probably going to make beef burgers. So homemade beef burgers, about 500 grams worth. I'm going to have some brie cheese to melt over the top of that. And I'm going to have probably 6 or 7 eggs over that as well. And I might use a little bit of mustard just as a garnish. But I've got no idea how many calories are in that. No idea at all. But I know that it's nutritionally dense. It's high in fat, and I will be satiated on that single meal all the way through to tomorrow afternoon, despite doing a high amount of exercise tomorrow at lunchtime.
Yep. I think one of the things about eating in this way is that it restarts your innate intuition about how you're feeling. Your body starts to work in the way it should. So it tells you when it's hungry and it tells you when it's full. And that's what you need to know, because you're not eating things that are detrimental. You're not eating things that are empty, excess calories. You're just eating food that your body can use for building, for growing, repairing. It uses it when it needs more. It tells you. When it had enough, it tells you. And that's all you need to know.
Yeah, and that's a bit of a learning curve in and of itself, because you've got 2 hunger systems. You've got your homeostatic hunger system, or your physiological hunger system, which is your body telling you, I need sustenance. And then you've got your hedonic hunger system, which is I want pleasure, I want comfort, I want entertainment. And maybe it wasn't like this for our great-grandparents. And you touched on it a little bit a while ago, where they were eating better food, right? Even though it was wartime, even though stuff was going on, like their food was, it was more nutritionally dense because we hadn't depleted the soil to the levels that we have now. And indeed, they weren't as sugar heavy, they weren't as processed food heavy as what we are today. But for us, we're so entrained to go after food for pleasure, comfort, or distraction, entertainment. That's an entirely different hunger system. And people, for me at least, it was quite an experience to learn the difference between those two, because they're almost like 2 different voices in your head. You've got to learn which one. Okay, I'm not going to entertain you. I'm not actually hungry. I'm just bored, or this is like I need to go do something to get a bit of dopamine. Let me go do a bit of exercise instead. Versus being truly hungry because you want sustenance.
I think there's 2 things going on there as well. So that when the pathogenic bacteria are in charge, their favourite food is sugar, and they have direct access to your brain, and they tell your brain as often as you possibly can, feed me sugar now. So the sugar cravings are generally not you, they're the bacteria. Now, once that balances out and they are controlled, and there are some forms of pathogenic bacteria that reside in our gut anyway, and they're used by the beneficial ones for certain processes. But once they're in the minority, they don't shout very loudly. And so your need for that dopamine hit and the quick sugar pretty much disappears. But I also think that pleasure signal and the hunger signal can coincide together. So recently I had a friend that gave me 3 sheep. They're a Hungarian variety called Rutska. They're quite a rare sheep. I did the butchery myself, and we made a mutton stew a couple of weeks ago. We used chicken stock to cook it in the slow cooker. I put that in my mouth and my brain exploded. It is one of the most tasty things I've ever eaten in my life. And I could feel my body going, oh my God, give me more of that right now. So that for me is both the hunger and the pleasure being combined. And just to speak to what you said there about the quality of the food, most of the food we get in the supermarket for meat is pretty tasteless, really. When you taste something like that, which has been grown and husbanded in a really traditional way, you've been connected to it. It's not been fed anything that it shouldn't be. It's not hybridized monstrosity as many of the modern animals are. The taste is unbelievable. And even we keep my own birds at home with the chickens. Every chicken variety tastes different, and they have a different color of meat, a different quality of meat, and that's all been lost because people aren't connected to the food, and it's just something out of the supermarket that comes from a factory and it has a chickeny taste. But they're not. The body's not going, give me more of that. It's just fulfilling a need.
Yeah.
And when you get back to that really natural way of doing things, the taste's phenomenal.
100%. Well, Simon, before we close off, what I like to ask my guests is, if there's one thing that you would like to resonate with the audience from today's discussion, for you, what would that be?
I would say it's that you can 100% take charge of your own health. Where you are now is not where you're going to be, because everything changes. The only constant in life is change. Tomorrow, your entire life could change in 100 ways. So being stuck is not an option. You can have all the knowledge in the world that you like, but without taking any action at all, you just stick with lots of knowledge and you get nowhere. So all you have to do is start to take action in the right direction. And you don't have to worry about this huge mountain you got to climb. You just got to take one step and another step and another step and another step. And don't let everything you think you know hold you back, because there's always new knowledge out there to get. You listen to the right people. You listen to people who have done the thing that you're trying to do and have been successful. Ask them questions, because they can take you there much faster than you have to try to work it all out yourself. It's sort of mentorship. So look around online for people who are where you want to be. Ask them questions, join forums. Most people are really happy to help. But your health is yours to change 100%.
Well, Simon, thank you very much. It's been absolutely awesome having you on the show. We'll definitely be doing it again sometime.
Hopefully I can come back on once there's a film to talk about as well. Thanks so much, Ricky. Really appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks for your time, everyone.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching the episode. I hope that you found the conversation meaningful and informative, and I hope that it has empowered you with some tools and insights that you can take to tweak and improve your own lifestyle approach in pursuit of optimal metabolic health outcomes. If you've enjoyed the episode, and if you're enjoying the podcast, I'd like you to do me the kindness of please subscribing to the channel, giving it a like, maybe even giving it a share. Help to raise awareness and get the podcast in front of as many viewers as possible, because it is my passion to try and help as many people as possible to understand more of the nuance around metabolic health and how to tweak their lifestyle in pursuit of optimal outcomes. Also, if you have any constructive feedback, things that you think I could improve on, any critiques, any criticisms, please do feed them back. I give you my solemn word that I will take them seriously, and I will, to the best of my ability, work to improve and to give you a more refined and more targeted product as a result of your feedback. So I will take it seriously, and I'll do what I can to improve the show. But again, thank you very much for watching. Keep thriving.